Hey guys, it's your old pal Tony Giles TG here, welcoming you once again back into the record room. And on this week's episode, I wanted to take some time and talk about one of my favourite scores of all time, John Carpenter's Halloween. Now, I'm sure most of you out there are probably very familiar with John Carpenter's Halloween the movie, and even the score. I mean, if you're not, you probably are aware of the theme song. It gets played every year without fail around the Halloween season, and the film is 40 plus years old now, so there is a good chance you are familiar with it. And I myself have just recently finished my vinyl collection of the Halloween score, and it's not every version there is because there are quite a few, but I have 5 different versions of the Halloween score which I wanted to talk to you about today and go into a little bit more detail and show you some of the differences. And for those of you out there that also enjoy audio podcasts, well, I teamed up with my former podcasting brother Skojo, and we recorded a conversation discussing the merits of the different versions of the Halloween score, their release order, some of the information we could find about the various different versions, and ultimately we spoke about how much we love the record and love the score that John Carpenter created way back in the day. So I've got 5 different versions of the record here. Let's head on over to the table and take a look. Okay guys, Halloween on vinyl. And since the film's release, there have actually been, from the research I've done and can find, there have been 5 different versions of the score released on vinyl. Now, there have been different variants. I don't know exactly how many variants there are, probably double that. But the versions I have of the record here, they're all different in some way, which I can't think of any other horror movie or just movie score in general over the last 40 years that has had so many different releases. Sure, there have been anniversary versions and scores with bonus material, but these are quite different, almost unique in their differences. And, you know, as I said before, there is going to be an audio podcast accompanying this episode, where we'll talk a little bit more about the differences between the records. So I won't go into too much detail right now. This is kind of more the show and tell, but we will get into it. And the version of Halloween you can see right here, this is the Japanese pressing of Halloween. And this was actually the very first release of the Halloween score. And what makes this version kind of unique, different, the cover, as you can see, it's very recognizable, but it is different. Instead of having the Halloween orange, the flames on the inside of the pumpkin are more yellow, which does give it a unique look. It does. It looks different from, you know, kind of the Halloween we all know and love. And the obi strip down the side here, as you can probably see here and also here as well, it says Space Sizer 360 System Recording. Now, there is very little information online about the Space Sizer 360 system, and kind of the information I've ascertained is that this was a new kind of recording experience, almost like when they did quadraphonic records, where you would have 4 speakers and, you know, different things would come at you. The information I've found is that the Space Sizer was this hi-fi system, and the records released for it almost became like condensed movies on vinyl. So you would listen to a record and it would be like seeing the movie, but in audio form. And this version of Halloween, this is completely different from all of the other releases. This has nothing to do with John Carpenter whatsoever. He played nothing on this record, and from what I know, he has no clue about its existence. I mean, he may know about it, but he had nothing to do with it. And the record itself has songs from the film or cues from the film mixed in with dialogue from the film as well. So when you listen to it, it is like listening to an audio version of the film, which I I actually think is pretty cool. And we'll take a look at the packaging. There you go, that's the front. And the OB here, I have translated some of this using the trusty Google Translate app. And it just basically says, you know, Halloween, a little bit of information, some of the song titles, and then, you know, Space Sizer 360. And on the back there, you can see what is essentially like the old Varèse covers, track names, and some images from the film. Now, the record itself, it's black vinyl, as was the style at the time. And this came out exactly 1 year after the movie. So this came out in 1979, and for some odd reason, this is the very, very first pressing of Halloween on vinyl, or something resembling the Halloween score on vinyl. And this version, I picked this up many, many years ago, and I think I got it cheap back then, but the price on this has kind of skyrocketed over the last few years because, you know, horror franchises are highly collectible, and Halloween is probably up there as being the most collectible. And with most Japanese pressings, there is an insert. It does come with an insert, some information about the tracks on the record, and as it says, music composed by John Carpenter, performed by the Bowling Green Junior Philharmonic Orchestra. Very strange, but the insert itself is very, very nice. Some more still images, and it also has the dialogue that's on the album. So you can read along as you're listening to it, which is pretty cool. And the interesting part, or the thing that I find really fascinating, is this little section down here. There we go. And this is a description of how to set up your Space Sizer 360 system to get the best sound out of it. So look, if anyone out there has any more information about the Japanese 360 Space Sizer system, please get in touch. I would love to know. There is very little information online, so I would be curious to know how this record is supposed to sound on this designated system. But there you go, that's the very first pressing of the Halloween score, the Japanese version, the Space Sizer 360 system recording, released on Columbia Records in 1979. Now up next came the Varèse Sarabande release in 1983, so 5 years after the movie came out, and this is the version most of us came to love, cherish, and covet. And the Varèse pressing, or the Varèse version, this was actually pressed 3 different times. The version you see in front of you right now, this is a true blue first pressing. And the way you can tell, on the back here, it's got this lovely yellow cover, which I really love this yellow cover. Most Varèse releases were black and white on the back, but this yellow just pops. But the first pressing, as you can see here, no barcode. The second pressing has a barcode in the top right-hand corner. So that's how you know if you've got a second pressing. Also, there was a Columbia Record Club pressing of the record as well. And the way to identify that, down here in the bottom corner, there'll be a very tiny print that says CRC. That's how you know the difference between which version you have. I would find it hard to believe that they use different plates for the different versions. I'm almost positive they are all going to sound the same. I don't know because I don't have those versions, because quite frankly I don't feel like I need them. I have this here, the original pressing of Halloween. It has notes from John Carpenter, which is fantastic, and these beautiful stills from the movie. Now we'll flip this over and we'll take a look at the record. And for those of you wondering, this was actually the final version I needed for my collection, and I managed to luck out and get this one for a pretty decent price. And yeah, it is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. This is how I want my Halloween to look. Very, very happy with this. Happy to finally close the chapter on collecting the Halloween scores as well, because it has been a while. But this version was not actually the music in the film. This version was touched up, in places, and we go into a little bit more detail about that on the audio podcast accompanying this episode, so make sure you do check that out. But that one came out in 1983, and there was also another release in 1983, which I'll talk about right now. So while you had the Varèse Sarabande release over in America, in Germany you had the Celine Records release, which I believe is in conjunction with Coliseum. And Coliseum, from what I know, is they were essentially the European version of Varèse Sarabande. Varèse did eventually press records and release them in Europe, but for a time, Coliseum did release a lot of the same titles as Varèse Sarabande, and they looked almost identical. A couple of differences between the Celine version and the Varèse version. As you can probably tell, this version has a gloss cover. You can see there, lights are bouncing off of it. It is a beautiful, beautiful gloss cover. At the top it says original film music in German. It has the catalogue number and the label logo. So very similar to the Varèse version, but instead of saying original motion picture, it says original film music. You also get this, the colours are virtually the same, and I think the reason it's slightly different, I mean the text is white instead of like the grey, and the Halloween pumpkin is almost kind of muted a little bit, and I think part of that is to do with the gloss cover. But the cover, the artwork, the design, it's virtually identical. And if you look at the back, aside from being white, it's almost exactly the same as the Varèse. There are a couple of pictures missing, but for the most part, it is the same. You are seeing the same images on both versions, and you also get the director's notes as well, which is pretty cool. So yeah, this German version, which was actually my first ever pressing of Halloween, this is all around kick-ass as far as I'm concerned. And what's also pretty cool about this version, it doesn't say it on the front, but it does say it on the back. I don't know if you'll be able to see it right there, but this is a half-speed master, which, for those of you that don't know, the theory is if you master a record at half the speed and then play it back at full speed, it will sound fantastic. And how does this record sound? Well, my friends, it actually does sound pretty fantastic. And on the label there, it also says half speed mastered. So yeah, if you've got this version and you're thinking you need the Varèse version, I don't know, you know. I do not know. I will wait till the end of the episode to give my opinion on which version I believe is best. But I will say this. The German pressing, this one right here, this is a fantastic version of the Halloween score. So the German version, originally released in 1983, was also repressed in 1989 as well. But as far as new versions of the record went, there was nothing for a long time until 2013, when Mondo issued this beast right here. This is a double LP cut 45 RPM. And essentially what you get here is the 25th anniversary CD release on vinyl. I don't know anything about the mastering, where they came from or anything like that. But if I were a gambling man, that's what I would gamble on. And the version you can see here, this is actually the orange vinyl version. There are two different versions of this. One came on orange vinyl, one came on black vinyl. And this was back in the day when Mondo used to do the random inserts of the variants. I know that I actually picked up a black vinyl version when I first got the record. So a buddy of mine was selling his orange version. I just thought, yeah, you know what? I love the shade of orange that this pressing is. So I jumped on it. I just thought, yeah, you know what? I am going to have that in my collection. It's a really nice, solid pressing. And how does it sound? Well, it sounds pretty darn good to me. The artwork is quite striking. Unlike anything I've seen it from the Halloween franchise, and it is a gatefold. And you do get this nice image of Michael there. So that's pretty cool. I won't show you the other disc because it's exactly the same as that. It's orange, but the pumpkin is a different color. In fact, I will do. For the sake of completion, I will just show this to you. There you go. The pumpkin is a slightly different color. But there you go. That's what the second disc looked like. So There you go. But again, this orange just really pops. I've got some orange vinyl records, but nothing that pops quite like this one does. So yeah, very, very happy to have this one. So that came out in 2013, and it's a great release. It's a really, really great release. But it wouldn't be too long before we received something altogether quite different. Now, to celebrate the film's 40th anniversary, Death Waltz released something quite unique. The version of Halloween here is taken from the original film stems. In fact, I'm going to read, let me just grab here what it says on the Obi strip. It says here, original film music stems transfer, sequencing, mixing and mastering by Alan Howarth. Now, we talk a little bit more about Alan Howarth on the podcast that accompanies this episode, but essentially what you have here, this is Halloween direct from the source. This is a standalone release because none of the others sound like this. None whatsoever. This is a fantastic listening experience. If you don't have this version of Halloween, I would highly recommend tracking this one down ASAP, just because it sounds so odd. It's so familiar because you've heard this music for years. But boy, it is one fantastic listening experience. And the disc on this, clear with pumpkin orange and black splatter, I mean, this just works for me. This is firing on all cylinders. I love the label artwork. I love the variant. I love everything about this. I will be honest, I wasn't super familiar with listening to this. The first time I listened to it was kind of jarring, but then I listened to it the other day in preparation for this episode, and I sat there and I just thought, this is incredible. This is truly, truly incredible. And Scott and I do talk about this version on the podcast, so do check that one out. As I said, I will leave a link in the description, but which version does old TG recommend the most? Is it the Death Waltz? Is it the Mondo? Is it the Celine? Is it the Japanese Space Sizer? Well, my friends, as you may have guessed, it's actually the Varèse Sarabande original pressing. For my money, this is the single best sounding version of the Halloween score. It's not exactly true to the film, but this is the version that I'm going to be going to anytime I feel like listening to Halloween. This will be the one I go for. Unfortunately, the price is rising on this, so if anyone out there wanted to do a straight reissue of this version, well, I would be quite into that and would happily add another copy to my collection. But yeah, there you go. For my money, the Varèse Sarabande is the best sounding version, and the Celine is a very, very close second. I will say that. There's not much in it between those two versions. They are both outstanding, but the Varèse just pipped the Celine to the post. Now, thank you for joining me for this look at the Halloween score. Remember to follow us online at Record Room Show. Be sure to wash your hands, wear your mask, stay gold, be safe out there, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're interested in hearing more about the Halloween score, click the link in the description below. But until next time, stay gold.